What does this consolidation of personal power mean for China and for the rest of the world? I'm joined by Dr. Yu Xi. Welcome to Times Radio.
Nice to hear from you, Michael.
I should have said you're a senior research fellow on China in the Asia Pacific program at Chatham House. Tell me, if you would please, what do you think Xi achieved at the recent Communist Party Congress? How is it that a party which, after Mao had set its mind against rule by one man, now finds itself adoring one personality again?
Well, obviously, it's a huge personal victory for him that he finally really get what he wants. In the last 10 years, if you look into the composition of the cabinet, it is not exactly all his closest ally. But I mean, really for this round, as the list published on Sunday, we found out it's all his closest colleague, and he managed to appoint it on the most senior positions. Now, this leaves to us in a China that's somehow would be more interested in inward looking, that more interested in fixing its own domestic economic disease rather than in further engaging with the rest of the world. I mean, just listen to his speech on the previous Sunday when the Congress was opened. This entire passage for 1.5 hours, and he did not mention a single word of United States. But all he has referring to and the strategy that China prepared is really prepare the worst and deterioration of China-US relations.
Yeah. It also seems that he aspires to produce a Chinese uniformity within the boundaries of the state, so that Uyghurs, Tibetans, and Mongolians, for example, will be repressed and re-educated. Is that correct?
Well, that's part of the, if you look into the political report, then that's part of what he's referring to, that sense of very strong Chinese culture will be presented. Hence, the Chinese culture would be the dominant culture across the country.
Yes, and that is a euphemism for repression and re-education.
Yes and no. I mean, I have not really engaged with much of the ethnic minority studies as such at all. But what I found out really for that political report, he has really put the Chinese culture really in the heart of his running agenda.
He does seem very determined to take control of Taiwan. Do you judge that he's willing to risk a confrontation with the West? And let me tack on another question there. Do you think he'll be encouraged by the very soft reaction from the West to the ending of democracy and freedoms in Hong Kong?
Well, not necessarily. I think let's carefully look into the words, again, back to the political report. He did not really offer exact timeline and to what extent, and he would like to have this military escalation on the one hand. But then on the other hand, the words on Taiwan, the words of against independence has been now enshrined into the party constitution. So rhetorically, there's a sense of escalation. But I think given the current economic slowdown, the time is really not on his side if he decided to have a military escalation.
Yeah, just explain that a tiny bit further. The time is not on his side. You mean that he would need to act quickly in that case?
Not exactly that quickly. It's just not the right time, firstly. And secondly, that is not really the preferred strategy China has been seeking in terms of the so-called resolve the Taiwan question or reunification. Is partially what China is trying to do is in trying to increasing its economic capacity and military capability, and hopefully one day that Taiwan will just automatically become part of China. I think that's what Beijing is after. It's not necessarily military escalation, as some commentators may predict it.